and I want to talk about the section called proofs. So what are proofs? Proofs, here's what you need to know. First thing is, when you're doing a proof, we are not solving an equation. We are not solving an equation. Rather, we are proving that one side of the equation equals the other. Proving that one side of the equation equals the other. Let's get these notes down, then with an example everything will become clear. We only, I'll use the math word, or the other word could be like work with. We only manipulate or like work with one side of the equation. We leave the other side untouched. We leave the other side untouched. And number 3 is we manipulate / work with the more complicated side. And it will usually is very obvious which side that is. The more complicated side. And make it look like the other side. These are the 3 things to remember about proofs. I'll be showing 3 examples in class. So I'm just going to freeze this, take 10 seconds to make sure you get it all down, and then we will move to problem number 1, level 4. Problem number 1, level 4. Okay, so here we are. Let's jump right in. So problem 1 says, I'm going to unfreeze in 1 sec, so finish the copying. Cosine of x over 1 minus sine squared of x, and that equals secant of x. So here we are. So here, folks, step 1 is identify which side is more complicated. This is definitely the more complicated side. There's a fraction, there's more trig functions, there's a squared. This is the complicated side. The next thing we need to do is identify which, if any, identities might be helpful here. When I look at this problem, I see 2 identities I might use. Yeah, the first one I see is that secant of x equals 1 over cosine of x. And there's one more. Does anybody see the other one? Excellent. So these are the 2 identities I see. My goal is to make this complicated side, like get rid of all the complications and make it just be secant of x. That's the goal. So like my final answer will be secant equals secant. That's the final answer. You got to make this side be secant because that is what this side is. And remember, you're not going to touch this side. Remember we said with proofs, you only work on one side, the complicated side, which happens to, in this case, be left. It won't always be the left side. Sometimes it could be the right side. It's always going to be one of them. So let's see what to do. Well, if I look at the left side of the equation, only one of these identities is applicable to the left side. Right? Clearly, this identity is the one that's applicable to the left side. So you need to rewrite this identity so it is useful here. So you rewrite this identity so it is useful here. This is very similar to what we did yesterday maybe we rewrote it as this. And this is nice because this brown box is the same as this brown box. So replace the brown box in our fraction, or in our problem, with this. So what do I have? Well, the upstairs of our fraction didn't change. That's still cos of x. The downstairs is no longer this. It is now cosine squared of x. Bless you. And this equals secant of x. Because remember, we're not doing anything on the right. What's the easy win here? There's an easy win. What is the easy step here? How can I simplify this more? Omar?
It would be better to separate cosine squared to cosine of x. Cosine of x.
Okay. And George, say again. Yeah, one of these is going to cancel out. You pick which one, doesn't matter, on the bottom. And upstairs you have a 1 left. Downstairs you have a cos x left. And on the right side, please, keep on writing secant of x. Bless you. Work down the page. Don't try to work sideways. Just work down the page. Paper is not the limiting factor. 1 over cosine equals secant of x. But don't leave this as the answer. Remember, we already said that 1 over cosine, you could rewrite this as secant. So rewrite 1 over cosine as secant of x. We have not even changed the right side at all this whole problem. Put a little check mark, and there's your final answer. Call it a day. We have 2 problems left, so don't actually call it a day, but call it a day for this problem.
So we leave it as 1 over cosine.
We'll take off a point. Make the left side, make the complicated side look exactly like the right uncomplicated side. Secant x equals secant x, check mark. That's what you need to see. So I'll be looking for the work. I'm not going to look for this. I'm telling you the answer right now. I'm going to look for the work. Last year we had people who try to be smart and were like, let me just write this like on step 2 and he's not going to know it. Appreciate the honesty, Brandon. Guilty. Alright, let's go to number 12.
Wait, so for these problems, it's always going to be equal?
They will always equal. They're always going to work out. We're not going to give you one that doesn't work. So number 12, here we go. Alright, so number 12 says sine of x plus cosine of x squared plus sine of x minus cosine of x squared equals 2. Again, one side is clearly more complicated than the other. Absolutely right. This side is the more complicated side. And now remember the next step was, can we identify, which identities might be helpful? Unfortunately, when I look at this, I don't see any identities. I don't have any identity for sine. I didn't have an identity for cosine. I didn't have an identity for sine. I didn't have an identity for cosine. Certainly no identity for the 2. I don't really see one I can use. Skip it. Yeah, hold up. Let me multiply this out. Let me square this out. So I can take this factor squared, I'll get some numbers. This factor squared, I'll get something else. And then we can do some simplification. Let's make it happen. So you may need to use the box for this. Let's ensure the cell phone doesn't come out again. So using the box on this, what do I get? Sine squared x plus 2 sine x cosine of x plus, and again, if you're not sure how to get this, you need to ask me. I'm assuming people know how to do the box. If you're not comfortable with that, I would highly encourage you to ask, because things will be a bit miserable. Alright, here we go. This is what you will get if you use the box. Again, if you need to see me do this, you need to ask. I'm not going to do it, George. You like to see me do it?
Yeah.
Okay. I think there are many of your classmates who are happy you asked. So, sine x plus cosine of x squared. So let's draw my box. Sorry, plus. So we're squaring this, which means this times itself. Sine times sine, sine squared. Sine times cosine, sine x cos x. Sine times cosine, sine x cos x. Cosine times cosine, cosine squared x. So what does this equal? Well, it equals, we got 1 sine squared of x. We have 2 sine x cosine x. And we have 1 cosine squared x. Does that work, George?
Yeah.
Then I would do the same exact thing for the orange. Except I would have a minus here.
Yeah.
Okay. You're welcome. Thank you for asking. Okay, now combine like terms. Let's identify these with a check mark. So here's a sine squared. Here's another plus sine squared. That's going to be 2 sine squared of x. Here's a cosine squared. Here's a cosine squared. It's going to be a plus 2 cosine squared of x. Here is a positive 2 sine x cos x. Here is a negative 2 sine x cos x. If one is positive and one is negative, cancel out. Very good. So that's done. So everything has a check mark of it, so we accounted for everything. And in brown, we still have over here, we haven't even touched the right side, equals 2. Okay? Remember, we've already made the decision. We're going to work with this. We need to write, our final answer is going to be 2 equals 2. Somehow we need to write this to be equal to 2. You need to use some identity. There's only one identity that is even going to be helpful here. What's the identity? Done. Done. Money in the bank. Alright, so here we are. But how am I going to, don't just magically put this in here. How is this going to get here? You got to figure that out. Omar. It's not called distributing, factoring.